University of Berkshire Hathaway, by Daniel Pecaut with Corey Wren. Introduction. Imagine for a moment that a business partner you trusted looks you in the eye, shakes your hand, and makes you a promise. He agrees to buy your stake in a company for $11.50 a share. You walk away, trusting his word. A few days later, a formal letter arrives. The offer is there in black and white, but it's for a fraction less. Just 12.5 cents less per share. It's a tiny amount. A rounding error, really. Most people would let it slide. It's not worth the fight. But for one young investor in 1964, it wasn't about the money. It was about the principle. That handshake was a bond, and his partner had tried to chisel him. So, instead of getting angry and walking away, he did something else. He started buying more. And more. He kept buying until he owned the entire company, and then he fired the man who had tried to cheat him. That young man was Warren Buffett. And that tiny, struggling textile company was named Berkshire Hathaway. That single act of defiance, born from a broken promise over a few pennies, set in motion one of the greatest stories of wealth creation in human history. Today, we're going to open the doors to a very exclusive school, the University of Berkshire Hathaway. For over 30 years, authors Daniel Pecaut and Corey Wren sat in the front row, taking feverish notes at Berkshire's annual shareholder meetings. They watched two of the world's greatest minds, Warren Buffett and his partner Charlie Munger, teach a masterclass in business, investing, and life. This isn't just a book, it's a transcript of a 3-decade conversation with genius. My promise to you is this: by the end of our time together, you will have earned a degree from this university. You won't just learn what these men did to become billionaires, you'll understand how they think. You'll learn the simple, timeless principles that allowed them to navigate crashes, bubbles, and panics, not with fear, but with a calm, rational clarity that seems almost superhuman. This is more than an investment summary. It's a lesson in wisdom, discipline, and the quiet power of thinking for yourself. So, pull up a chair. Class is now in session. Book summary. To truly understand the story of Berkshire Hathaway, we have to go back to the beginning, to a simple idea that changed Warren Buffett's life forever. When he was a young man at Columbia Business School, he had a professor named Benjamin Graham. Graham wasn't just any teacher, he was the father of a philosophy called value investing, and he taught Buffett a lesson so simple, yet so profound, that it became the bedrock of everything that followed. Graham said that the world of investing boils down to two things: price and value. Price is what you pay. Value is what you get. It sounds obvious, doesn't it? But Graham noticed that the stock market often acts like a moody, unpredictable business partner. Some days he's euphoric and will offer to sell you his shares at ridiculously high prices. Other days, he's terrified and will offer to sell you those same shares for pennies on the dollar. The secret, Graham taught, is to ignore the mood swings. Your job is to figure out what a business is truly worth, its intrinsic value, and then wait patiently for your moody partner to have a moment of panic and offer you a price far below that value. In other words, you wait for the chance to buy $1 of value for 50 cents. And one more thing, Graham insisted on what he called a margin of safety. You don't buy $1 for 97 cents. The gap between price and value has to be enormous. As Buffett would later put it, when you build a bridge, you insist it can carry 30,000 pounds, but you only drive 10,000-pound trucks across it. That gap, that margin of safety, protects you from bad luck, bad timing, and your own inevitable mistakes. For the first part of his career, Buffett was Graham's star student. He hunted for what he called cigar butts. He'd look for deeply unloved, beaten-down companies that were trading for less than the cash they had in the bank. They were like discarded cigar butts on the street, ugly and soggy, but with one free puff left in them. You could pick it up, take that one last puff and toss it away. It wasn't glamorous, but it was profitable. That's exactly what Berkshire Hathaway was in the early 1960s. A dying New England textile company, a cigar butt. But then Buffett met a man who would change his thinking forever, Charlie Munger. Munger was also from Omaha, and he was just as brilliant as Buffett, but in a different way. He wasn't interested in one last puff from a soggy cigar butt. Charlie saw the world differently. He argued, why not buy a truly wonderful business at a fair price, rather than a fair business at a wonderful price? A great business, he reasoned, would compound its value year after year. The business itself would do the heavy lifting for you. This was a revolutionary idea for Buffett. It was a complete departure from what his hero, Ben Graham, had taught him. But the more he talked with Charlie, the more it made sense. And their first real test of this new philosophy came in 1972, with a little California company that sold chocolates, See's Candy. By all of Ben Graham's metrics, See's was expensive. Buffett had to pay a price that was much higher than its physical assets were worth. The old Buffett would have walked away. But the new Buffett, guided by Munger, saw something else. He saw a brand that people loved. He saw a product that made people happy, a company that customers returned to, year after year, for Valentine's Day and Christmas. It was a business that didn't need a lot of capital to grow, and it gushed cash. They paid $25 million for See's. Since then, it has generated over $2 billion in pre-tax profit for Berkshire. It required almost no additional capital investment. See's Candy became their laboratory. It taught them the incredible power of a great brand and a loyal customer base. As Buffett later admitted, without See's, we would not have bought Coke. That one purchase, that one shift in thinking from cigar butts to wonderful businesses, unlocked the future of Berkshire Hathaway. But there was another secret, a hidden engine humming away deep inside Berkshire that turbocharged their returns. And to understand it, we need to talk about insurance. In 1967, Buffett bought an insurance company called National Indemnity. On the surface, it doesn't sound very exciting. But Buffett saw something that few others did. He saw the magic of the float. Think about it like this. When you pay your car insurance premium, you pay the money up front. But the insurance company doesn't have to pay out claims until accidents actually happen, which could be months or even years down the road. That pool of money, the premiums they've collected but haven't yet paid out in claims, is the float. Essentially, it's a giant, interest-free loan from policyholders that the insurance company can invest for its own profit. If the company is run well and doesn't lose money on the policies it writes, that float is basically free money. Charlie Munger put it best. He said, basically, we're a hedgehog that knows one big thing. If you generate float at 3% per annum and buy businesses that earn 13% per annum with the proceeds of that float, we have figured out that's a pretty good position to be in. And that's exactly what they did. Over the decades, they grew that float from just a few $1 million to over $100 billion. For every dollar of their own capital, they had this extra pool of money to invest. It was like playing with house money. It leveraged all their returns without the normal risks of borrowing. So you have these two powerful ideas working together. First, use the massive, low-cost float from the insurance businesses as fuel. Second, use that fuel to buy wonderful businesses with durable competitive advantages, companies like Coca-Cola, Gillette, and American Express. That was the formula. That was the wealth compounding machine they built. Now, with this foundation in place, we can step into the classroom at the University of Berkshire Hathaway and learn the timeless lessons that this machine was built upon. These are the core principles, repeated year after year at the annual meetings, that form the curriculum of their genius. The first and most fundamental lesson is to change the way you see a stock. To most people, a stock is a little ticker symbol that wiggles up and down on a screen. It's a gamble, a bet on which way the line will go tomorrow. Buffett and Munger teach that this is a disastrous way to think. A stock, they insist, is not a lottery ticket. It is a small piece of ownership in a living, breathing business. When you buy a share of Coca-Cola, you now own a tiny fraction of every factory, every truck, every bottle, and every future can of Coke that will be sold around the world. Your financial fate is now tied to the real-world success of that business. Buffett suggests a simple thought experiment. Before you buy any stock, ask yourself, would I be willing to buy the entire business at this price? And if you bought it, would you be happy to own it forever, even if the stock market shut down for 10 years? This shifts your mindset from that of a speculator to that of a business owner. You stop worrying about the daily wiggles on the screen and start asking the questions that really matter. Does this business have a durable competitive advantage? Does it have a moat around it that protects it from competitors? Do I understand how it makes money? Do I trust the people running it? This brings us to the second great lesson, which flows directly from the first. It's the story of Mr. Market. This was another one of Ben Graham's brilliant teaching tools. Imagine you own a small piece of a private business, and you have a partner named Mr. Market. Your partner is a bit unstable. Every single day, he comes to your door and shouts out a price at which he's willing to either buy your share of the business or sell you his. The thing about Mr. Market is that his moods swing wildly. Some days, he's euphoric. He's read nothing but good news, and he offers you a ridiculously high price for your share. Other days, he's in a panic. He's convinced the world is ending, and he offers to sell you his share for a tiny fraction of what it's worth. Buffett and Munger teach that you have a choice. You can let Mr. Market's moods dictate your own. You can feel rich when he's happy and poor when he's sad. Or, you can treat him as your servant. You can ignore him on the days he's being irrational. But on the days he shows up in a panic, offering to sell you his share for a bargain, you can take advantage of his folly. And on the days he's deliriously optimistic, you might even consider selling him your share at an inflated price. The crucial point is this: Mr. Market is there to serve you, not to instruct you. The stock market is just a giant, real-life version of Mr. Market. It is constantly offering you prices. But you are never forced to act. The choice is always yours. You don't need to have an opinion on every company or feel pressured to trade just because everyone else is. Your job is to wait patiently for the moment of peak foolishness and then act decisively. This idea of patience leads directly to the third core lesson, the circle of competence. Buffett and Munger are famous for the businesses they didn't buy. In the late 1990s, during the dot-com boom, everyone was getting rich on technology stocks. Berkshire owned almost none. People thought they were old and out of touch. Buffett was publicly criticized for missing the new economy. But he and Charlie weren't being stubborn. They were being disciplined. Technology, for the most part, was outside their circle of competence. They didn't feel they could confidently predict which companies would be the winners and losers in 10 or 20 years. As Munger explains it, they have 3 boxes for any investment idea: in, out, and too hard. The secret to their success isn't having a giant inbox. It's having a huge too hard box and being brutally honest about what belongs in it. You don't have to be an expert on every industry. In fact, that's impossible. You just have to know the boundaries of your own knowledge. As Buffett says, you don't have to swing at every pitch. In investing, there are no called strikes. You can stand at the plate and watch thousands of pitches go by: tech stocks, biotech, cryptocurrencies. You can wait for that one perfect pitch, right in your sweet spot, the one business you understand completely, and then you swing with everything you've got. Over the years, People would ask Buffett why he passed on Microsoft, a company run by his good friend Bill Gates. Buffett's answer was simple. Technology is just not something he wanted to bet on. He admitted they were very close to Google. The founders came to see him before the IPO, and he knew Geico was paying them a fortune for every click. He saw the power of the business model up close. And still, he passed. He admits, "I blew it." But for every Google they missed, they avoided thousands of failures by simply staying within their circle. They knew they were better at predicting how many people would be drinking Coke or shaving with a Gillette razor in 10 years than they were at predicting the future of software. That discipline, that intellectual honesty, is a superpower. This brings us to what might be the most counterintuitive lesson of all. In investing, temperament is more important than intellect. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to be a great investor. In fact, a high IQ can sometimes be a disadvantage. Buffett and Munger have seen more people blow up with high IQs than with low ones. Why? Because smart people can construct elaborate, complex theories to justify foolish decisions. The real key, they say, is emotional stability. It's the ability to think for yourself and remain calm when everyone around you is either panicking or consumed by greed. It's the discipline to stick to your principles, even when it's uncomfortable or unpopular. Buffett tells a remarkable story about Sir Isaac Newton, arguably one of the most brilliant minds in human history. In the 1700s, Newton was an investor in the South Sea Company. The stock started to rise, and Newton, being a smart man, sold his shares and made a nice profit. But then the stock kept going up. And up. He watched his friends and neighbors, people far less intelligent than him, getting fabulously rich. The pull of the crowd, the fear of missing out, became too much. Newton jumped back in, buying at the very top of the bubble. He lost a fortune. Afterwards, he famously said, "I can calculate the motion of heavenly bodies, but not the madness of people." That story perfectly captures the essence of this lesson. Newton's intellect was no match for the emotional tidal wave of a speculative bubble. Success in investing has far less to do with how smart you are, and far more to do with how you behave. It's about cultivating a mindset that allows you to be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy only when others are fearful. This leads us to another key pillar of their philosophy, a deep-seated distrust of forecasts and complexity. Buffett often jokes, "Forecasts tell you a great deal about the forecaster. They tell you nothing about the future." And, "Don't ask the barber if you need a haircut." He and Munger pay almost no attention to macroeconomic predictions, what the economy will do next year, where interest rates are headed, or which way the market is going. They spend all their time on individual businesses. Their reasoning is simple: the future is unknowable. Trying to predict it is a fool's game. It's far more productive to focus on what is knowable, the quality and value of a specific business today. There's a stunning story that illustrates this perfectly. When Buffett graduated from Columbia in the early 1950s, the two people he respected most in the world, his father and his teacher, Ben Graham, both told him it was a terrible time to get into the securities business. The Dow Jones had just crossed 200, and they thought the market was dangerously high. If Buffett had listened to their forecast, he says, he would have just sat on his cash. But instead, he ignored the forecast and focused on finding undervalued businesses. And that made all the difference. This distrust of forecasts extends to a distrust of complexity. On Wall Street and in business schools, there's a love for complicated formulas with lots of Greek letters. One famous example is EBITDA, which stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. It's a way of looking at a company's earnings that ignores a lot of real costs. Munger's advice is simple. Everywhere you see EBITDA in some analyst's report, simply insert the words "bullshit earnings." They believe that if you need a spreadsheet and a calculator to figure out if something is a good investment, the answer is no. The truly great ideas, the no-brainers, should hit you over the head with their simplicity and obvious value. Of course, finding and running these great businesses requires great people. And that brings us to their approach to management. When asked how he finds such exceptional managers to run Berkshire's dozens of companies, Buffett jokes, "We cheat." He doesn't try to find promising young MBAs and train them. He simply buys businesses that are already being run by managers he admires. His primary job is to find people who love their business more than they love the money. People who would keep running their company with the same passion and integrity even if they didn't need to work another day in their lives. Once he finds them, his second job is to get out of their way. At Berkshire headquarters, there are fewer than 30 people. There are no corporate budgets sent down from on high. There are no quarterly earnings calls or pressure to meet Wall Street's expectations. He gives his managers one simple instruction, which he sends in a letter every 2 years. He tells them to run their business as if it's the only asset their family will own for the next 100 years. And he adds one critical rule: the newspaper test. He asks them to consider how they would feel if any action they were about to take was reported on the front page of their local newspaper, written by a smart but unfriendly reporter, and read by their family, friends, and neighbors. As he famously testified before Congress during the Salomon Brothers scandal in the 1990s, "Lose money for the firm, and I will be understanding. Lose a shred of reputation for the firm, and I will be ruthless." This unwavering focus on integrity, on a culture of trust and autonomy, is what makes Berkshire a preferred home for family-owned businesses. Sellers know that when they sell to Berkshire, they're not selling to a private equity firm that will load the company with debt and flip it in a few years. They're selling to a permanent owner who will honor their legacy. This long-term, rational approach has not only made them successful, it has also made them incredible observers of human folly. Throughout the 32 years covered in this book, Buffett and Munger consistently warned about the great speculative bubbles of their time, long before they burst. In the late 1980s, they cautioned against the creative financing of the junk bond mania, saying it would end with blood in the streets. It did. In the late 1990s, they compared the dot-com bubble to a chain letter, where early participants get rich at the expense of those who come later. That bubble burst spectacularly. And in the years leading up to 2008, they warned about derivatives, calling them financial weapons of mass destruction. They pointed out the folly of the subprime mortgage market, where, as Munger put it, Skid Row bums were swept up and given easy-term mortgages. We all know how that story ended. They weren't being prophets. They were simply being rational. They saw systems where incentives were misaligned, where complexity was used to hide risk, and where a herd mentality had taken over. They didn't know when the bubbles would burst, but they knew that anything built on a foundation of foolishness could not last forever. This brings us to their larger view of the world. Despite all the problems, panics, and recessions they've lived through, both men are profound optimists, especially about America. Buffett often tells students that the baby being born in America today is the luckiest individual in human history. He points out that since he was born in 1930, the country has been through a Great Depression, a World War, a Cold War, and 15 recessions. And yet, the average standard of living has increased sixfold. The system, for all its flaws, works. It unleashes human potential in a way that is truly extraordinary. This optimism is tempered with a deep sense of humility and gratitude, which Buffett captures in a thought experiment he calls the ovarian lottery. Imagine, he says, that it's 24 hours before you are to be born. A genie appears and tells you that you get to design the political, economic, and social rules of the society you are about to enter. The catch is, you don't know what your circumstances will be. You don't know if you'll be born male or female, black or white, rich or poor, brilliant or disabled. What kind of a world would you design? You would want a system that creates a lot of prosperity, that encourages innovation and growth. But you would also want a system with a social safety net, one that takes care of those who, through no fault of their own, didn't draw a lucky ticket in the lottery. Buffett says that he and Munger won the ovarian lottery. They were born male, white, in America, at a time when those things were huge advantages. And they were born with a wiring that happened to be very good at valuing businesses in a market system that pays for that skill like crazy. In Afghanistan, he says, we wouldn't be worth a damn. This perspective is the foundation of their belief that the wealthy have a responsibility to give back to the society that made their success possible. As we come to the end of our curriculum, the final lesson is perhaps the most personal. It's about life itself. Year after year, shareholders would ask them for advice on living a good life. And their answers were always simple, practical, and profound. Their number one piece of advice? The best investment you can ever make is in yourself. Your own mind and your own body are the only assets you are guaranteed to have for your entire life. Buffett tells the story of how he was terrified of public speaking as a young man. He would get physically ill just thinking about it. So he signed up for a Dale Carnegie course. It cost him $100. He says that diploma is the most valuable one hanging on his office wall, because it unlocked his potential and changed his life. Munger adds another layer. He says you should make it a practice to go to bed each night a little wiser than you were when you woke up. Read voraciously. Be a learning machine. If you rise slowly, but consistently, you are sure to rise. And finally, they talk about what really matters. When it's all said and done, Buffett says, you are successful if the people you hope love you, do love you. It has nothing to do with the numbers in your bank account. It's about the quality of your relationships and the integrity with which you've lived your life. As Munger puts it, with his trademark blend of wisdom and humor, the old virtues still work. Just plug along and stay rational. It's simple. But it's not easy. And that, in the end, is the deepest lesson from the University of Berkshire Hathaway. Commentary. As we close the book on our time at the University of Berkshire Hathaway, it's worth pausing to reflect on what we've truly learned. If you boil down these 32 years of wisdom, you're left with a philosophy that is shockingly simple. In a world that celebrates complexity, speed, and sophistication, Buffett and Munger built an empire on patience, simplicity, and old-fashioned common sense. The most powerful lesson, for me, isn't about a specific stock or a clever financial technique. It's about the power of temperament. It's the radical idea that your behavior, your emotional discipline, is a far greater determinant of your long-term success than your IQ or your credentials. It's about training yourself to be still when others are frantic, to be rational when others are caught in a storm of emotion. This isn't just an investment strategy, it's a life strategy. Their entire philosophy is built on inverting the conventional wisdom of Wall Street. Wall Street says you need to be diversified. They say you should concentrate your bets on your very best ideas. Wall Street says to watch the market every second. They say you'd probably be better off if you only got stock quotes once a year. Wall Street sells complexity. They preach the power of simplicity. What makes their story so compelling is that it's not just theory. They've lived it. They've proven, over half a century, that you don't need to predict the rain, you just need to build the ark. You build the ark with a fortress-like balance sheet, with a collection of wonderful businesses that can weather any storm, and most importantly, with a mindset that refuses to be swept away by the madness of the crowd. So, how can you start applying these lessons today, right now? Here are 3 simple actions. First, take their most important advice to heart. Invest in yourself. What is one skill that, like public speaking for Buffett, could unlock a new level of potential in your life? It could be learning to code, mastering a new language, or simply reading one book a week on a topic that fascinates you. The return on that investment will compound for the rest of your life. Second, start defining your circle of competence. Take out a piece of paper and write down the industries or businesses that you genuinely understand. It might be a surprisingly short list, and that's okay. The power comes not from the size of the circle, but from knowing exactly where the perimeter is. Make a commitment to only invest your time and money within that circle. Third, the next time you think about buying a stock, shift your mindset. Don't look at it as a ticker symbol. Research it as if you were going to buy the entire company. Read its annual reports for the last 10 years. Understand its competitive advantages, its management, and its culture. Ask yourself, is this a businessman I would be happy to own for the rest of my life? This simple shift from speculator to owner will change everything. The journey through the University of Berkshire Hathaway teaches us that building wealth and living a wise life are not that different. Both require patience, discipline, a commitment to lifelong learning, and the courage to think for yourself. The greatest fortunes are not made by chasing the latest fad, but by sticking to timeless principles. And that is a lesson worth more than any stock tip. That was a summary of University of Berkshire Hathaway by Daniel Pecaut and Corey Wren. We've explored the core principles and stories from this incredible collection of wisdom, but a summary is like looking at a postcard of the Grand Canyon. It gives you a sense of the scale, but it can't replace the feeling of standing on the edge yourself. The real value is in immersing yourself in the year-by-year narrative, watching these ideas unfold in real time through booms and busts. If any part of this journey has sparked your curiosity, I truly encourage you to pick up a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning investment theory, it's about spending time with two of the most brilliant and rational minds of our time. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It's the best way to let us know you want more journeys into the books that have shaped the world's most successful people. Let's keep learning together.